You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com for all your racing merchandise needs. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Our other co-host, you may have seen walking out of a great club with a big old smile on his face. You may have seen him at a dirt track. He is Scott Bowie. Hey, Scott, how are you?
What's going on, Aaron? How are you doing?
Doing great. So first off, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that we have another participant. So we're going to get him in just a second. Before we do that, just want to introduce our guest interview today, which is Bobby Allison. Definitely one of the greats of racing. Definitely one of the greats in NASCAR, but really racing in general.
Yeah, the Alabama gang and Bobby Allison. Wow, what a treat! I consider ourselves very lucky, especially when we start getting these older drivers to be able to speak with them, whether it's Paul Goldsmith or Mario or Bobby Allison. It's a treat and it's an honor to be able to speak with these people.
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely great. Even though it was just a phone interview, it was, really great to, really talk to him. We had a little bit of phone issues, but we definitely were able to work that out. We had to call him back a couple times. So we definitely appreciate Mr. Allison's time and definitely his daughter, Bonnie, as well, who helped set it up. So very appreciative of that.
Yeah, thanks to her and thanks to him for being so patient. And like I said, it was an honor speaking with him. And I think there'll be something in there, a little something in there for a lot of people. And he corrected you on how many wins he has, even though the rule book officially says 84. He officially acknowledges 85. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah. So, well, first off, thanks everyone for listening. If you haven't already, make sure you hit like and subscribe. If you haven't checked us out on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, check us out there as well as YouTube. We definitely appreciate all the support. So one of our first, I guess you would say, official partners is racercollect.com. And we were joined by Patrick Patton. Hey, Patrick, thanks so much for joining us. Just want to give you a moment to kind of talk about your business a little bit. Kind of where it came from and kind of what you're trying to do.
Sure. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. So lifelong Indy resident, big fan of racing in general. My dad, when we were kids, drug us, I think, to a lot of circle tracks and dirt tracks around Indianapolis and surrounding areas. And then as a kid, you get kind of bored and it's like, okay, you watch 10 minutes of racing and then you're off playing somewhere at the track. But as I got older, I gained an appreciation for all different forms of racing, primarily open wheel and specifically IndyCar. But my dad wasn't a fan of IndyCar, but finally made it out there to my first time in 1982 in my first race and just fell in love with the place and have been going back every year since, and have also worked with my son that he's become a huge gearhead race fan like his dad. So he and I go to several races a year, but as part of that, we started collecting things, which I think a lot of guys do. I can see your collection there, Aaron, in the background. I've got one very similar. In fact, I've got, a couple 10 by 10 storage units just full of stuff I've acquired over the years.
Right.
It's really kind of how this thing started. And a couple years ago, started thinking about, how you collect, at least how I collect around Indianapolis. And it's a lot of Facebook Marketplace time. It's a lot of maybe going to shows here, memorabilia shows here in Indianapolis, and then also eBay and some of the other outlets. And, always eluded me were those kind of cool pieces. How do I get a pair of driver's gloves? Or how do I get a visor? How do I get a pair of boots? And I see all these guys showing their stuff on the different social media sites, and was trying to figure out how I could get my hands on some of that stuff. And, started making connections in the collector world. And lo and behold, I get an email from a guy about almost exactly 2 years ago, asking me if I wanted to purchase some of his race used gear. And it just happened to be James Hinchcliffe. He'd gotten my name through some other collectors and reached out to me personally. And that sort of started a dialogue of this idea I'd had for quite a while about a marketplace for racing memorabilia specifically. And James liked the idea, and we talked about a few things. And figured out that a lot of drivers are collectors, first of all. And second of all, a lot of drivers have stuff that they'd like to sell and get into the hands of fans. But for them, it's tough. It's a couple things. They don't have the time. Their schedules are extremely busy with other commitments. And the other part of it is that there are people out there that do buy some of the collectibles from the drivers, but they pay such a low price because their intent is to turn around and flip it on a marketplace or eBay or someplace like that. And some of the drivers have gotten away from selling their items just for that reason, because they want to get it into the hands of the fans, and they want to make sure that somebody really appreciates it, can get it and get it at a reasonable price. And at the same time, the driver makes, a fair cut of the money coming from those items. So the thought was we put up a marketplace, and it's kind of a two-sided deal. One is the driver, the teams, where they can sell their stuff directly. We don't buy anything. We don't buy collections. We don't buy the stuff from the drivers. We simply provide a platform for the drivers to list their items. They sell it, and we take a commission. We offer a full service version of that, again, because drivers don't have a lot of time, where we'll actually pick the stuff up. We'll have it shipped. We'll do the photography. We'll do the listing. We'll do the negotiating with the potential buyer, and we'll ship out. And we do that for a little different fee structure. But at the end of the day, it's still substantially less than what you'll pay on an eBay or what some of the other guys out there that are buying this stuff for. And then the second part of the site is the marketplace. We want other collectors to be able to set up a shop and sell their own items. A lot of them are doing it on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. But the issue with that, like I said, eBay gets a little expensive, and Marketplace can be a little tough sometimes because you don't know who you're buying from. Meeting up with people, making the arrangements, having to answer, 50 messages. Is this still available? So we're trying to create a one-stop shop marketplace for racing fans. And we're open to all forms of racing, all types of racing items, because guys collect all kinds of stuff, from die cast to artwork to used body pieces and helmets, and you name it. There's probably somebody out there that collects it.
And I think that's great. Obviously, like you said, I collect stuff as well. I have driver suits, gloves, stuff like that. And I know how hard it is to, really get stuff from drivers. And,
Right.
5-10 years ago, if you wanted something from a driver, you had to ask them. And your idea really, helps kind of the end consumer really get their hands on something that they know is authentic because it's coming directly from the driver.
And part of it too is we're fortunate that we live in Indianapolis, at least as an IndyCar fan, is in that there's memorabilia shows, and a lot of the teams are based here. And, most of us that are Indy fans spend most of the month of May in Indy and know the ins and outs of the track and the pit area and the garage area. So, I noticed, IMS had an auction a couple of weeks ago. They've been doing that for about the last year or two, where they're auctioning off items from the Speedway, but they're not shipping. And then there are teams like Carpenter that's getting ready to have a garage sale.
Right.
And, I see tons of comments from fans saying, that's great, but I don't live in Indy. And, that's great, I could bid, but I can't, they won't ship. So how do I get this stuff? So part of what we want to do is broaden the audience and broaden the market outside of Indianapolis, and be able to allow people that live on the West Coast or the East Coast or even in Europe to buy some of this stuff, and we can get it to them. So part of what I've been doing is I've made the offer on Facebook and the website that if people want to shop or buy from the IMS auction, or they want to buy it from the Ed Carpenter or any team's garage sale, I'll be happy to facilitate that. I'll go to the help them shop. I'll facilitate the shipping. I'll take care of it all. And, obviously we'll charge a fee for that. But at the same time, we're making it available to people that wouldn't ordinarily be able to buy.
I really like kind of the idea where the drivers can actually use it. I'm going to use the term clearinghouse, but you can really use it as an area for them, like you said, to get it to the hands of the fans, because you can without going through a bunch of legal process, but the authenticity is going to be better than just, Joe Smith off of whatever site, and nothing against Joe Smith, but you can't. It's hard to guarantee the authenticity, and I'm sure that you've heard the rumors. Like I hear the rumors, like Aaron hears the rumors. Somebody gets a helmet, it's supposed to be one thing, but it's not even. It's painted one way, but it's not even the brand that the driver wore. And there's just it can be some dark alleys in that collecting business. So
absolutely. And, I think it's really tarnished. I've had lots of conversations with other people in the space and other guys that are doing similar things to what I'm doing. And that's the subject that always comes up. Memorabilia is a tough market because of the tarnish of people that are selling stuff that's fake signatures. So, one way to combat that is to go directly to the source, which is what we're doing. We're going to drivers and teams, and, they're providing that stuff directly. So we absolutely know that when I list a piece from Hinchcliffe or Pippa Mann, that it's coming from them. I physically picked it up from Hinch, or I physically picked it up from Pippa, watched him sign it, watched her sign it. So that's definitely something that I think we can help with. The other thing we're looking at doing is doing some authentication. We're working with a couple people that do signature authentication that are local, that have done this for years and years, and have these massive autograph collections. And we're going to start working with them to provide some type of, at least from a signature perspective, authentication service. But, as you start growing within these networks, the people I've met and the people that have reached out to me since I started this, you start to build this sort of network of experts that can tell you if you've got a question on a piece. Hey, somebody said it's this. And just like you said, get a helmet guy that knows, well, he didn't use that type of helmet. He used, Bell helmets. And you can start to fit the pieces of that puzzle together as well.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Just so people get what they pay for. I mean,
right.
They want authenticity. That's why they're buying it,
Exactly. And I think we've all been burned at one time or another. I know I have.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. Well, once again, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. And I think we'll go ahead and jump right into the Bobby Allison interview. And I think everyone will definitely enjoy it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing that interview.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to do it. And I just really hope the fans enjoy it as much as we did.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure he has some stories.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's got some stories.
Our guest today is one of the all-time racing greats. He's a 3-time Daytona 500 winner and Winston Cup Champion and IROC Champion. He also drove in 2 Indianapolis 500s and has 84 NASCAR Cup wins. We are joined by Bobby Allison. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute honor. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. And listen, right real quick, I won 85 races.
Yep.
The 85th win was awarded and then taken out of the record book because it was in a Grand American car.
Oh.
I would allow that to stand and it's just accepted, except Tiny Lund won 2 races and under the same conditions in his Camaro, and his both count.
Well, I didn't realize
his
that.
Count, and mine don't.
Yeah, that was kind of one of those deals where you think they were kind of just sticking it to you just a little bit because of some things that happened in the past, right?
Yeah.
They were. Yeah, I saw a little bit of that, and politics and racing they seem to go hand in hand, right?
Still to this day.
Yeah, somehow crazy stuff happens. And I gave Bill French Jr. some headaches because when I saw something that wasn't right, I spoke up. And he had a couple that he wanted to protect, and he's human too. I admired him so much because he did so much for racing. But at the same time, every once in a while, he did a little favor for somebody that he felt could do more for the sport, or they happen to like better, or he would happen to be annoyed at me about blowing a whistle on him for something. But anyway, facts are still facts, and I won it 85 times.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So I'm always gonna bring that up, or maybe not. Maybe I get tired of it someday. But for right now, I'm not tired of bringing it up. So I will bring it up.
Where was that win at?
Winston-Salem, Bowman Gray Stadium.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought they said.
Yeah.
And speaking of that stadium, they just did some testing for the next gen car. I think they're like yesterday, or the day before, right? I think Dale Jr. and Tony Stewart.
Yeah, they went there and analyzed it and run some test laps and all. I haven't really heard the reports that I know that I could rely on. So we still have to wait and see what the episode amounted to the other day. The racetrack was really neat. I ran a lot of races. I ran some modified races and won a couple. And I won a Grand National race in my little Chevelle that does count. And then I won the race in Melvin Joseph's Mustang.
Talk a little bit about how you first got interested in racing, and kind of maybe your earliest memory of racing. I was watching the documentary the NASCAR Hall of Fame did about you several years ago, and they were talking about how when you first got into racing, your dad wasn't too fond of it, so you raced under a different name. And then once he saw you were successful, he said you need to, own up to your own name and race under your name.
Yeah, actually, it was a little bit longer, spread out more than that. My mom's father, my grandpa Patton, was living with us. There was 10 of us kids, and mom and dad, and Grandpa Patton.
Wow.
And Grandpa had his own little car, a little 39 Plymouth coupe that he drove around for wherever he wanted to go. And he was a big sports fan. He wasn't an athlete himself or a competitor, but he was a great fan. And he would take one of us kids, and he was pretty careful about making sure he got one of us each time. And everybody got a chance to go. So he told Bobby, let's go to the car races. And so he took me to Opelika Speedway, a little track that was on the grounds of Opelika Naval Air Station. And he just really caught my attention. Here were these guys racing around here. And the straightaways were paved, but the corners were dirt. But they slid around there and charged down those straightaways and just had a big old time racing. And I really enjoyed it. And so then I followed it as close as I could. Now I couldn't go a lot. I was about 10 or 11, maybe all the way up to 12. But I would ride my bicycle from our house to Opelika Speedway, which was probably 10 or 12 miles.
Ooh.
And go to those races. I didn't get to go a lot, but I went a few times. And it just really got so enthused with it. And then they built the new Hialeah Speedway, which was a paved third mile, nice grandstands and concession stands and guardrails and a modern racetrack. And as they were getting it done, I was coming up on 16 years old. And in Florida at the time, you could drive with a restricted license when you're 14 years old. So I got my restricted license the morning I turned 14. And so I had plenty of miles on the neighborhood, around my neighborhood. And our quarterback on our Catholic high school football team where I went to school had a 38 Chevy Coupe, and he'd taken the fenders off and painted a nice little blue and gold or blue and yellow paint job on the thing. And I bought that thing from him and took that out there to Highland Speedway for opening night. And about 30 cars showed up for the first event there. And I finished 5th. And I thought, boy, I was really, really good. You know, a few of the cars had guys that had some miles on them, you know, had some racing experience. And here I was, a complete amateur in a complete amateur home-prepared car. And ran 5th. Went back the next week, and there were about 40 cars were there, and I ran 5th again. Went back the 3rd week, and there were about 50 cars there. I mean, there were cars everywhere. And I won the race. And so I was ready to go racing. And here I was, you know, 16 by then, and I was tiny. I was really tiny for my age. And, you know, I take my cushions and be able to let my seat so I could see over the steering wheel and over the hood, and push me up where I could reach the pedals and everything. And I really went after them. I really was pleased at being able to get a win that early. And I didn't win again for a few weeks, but I ran good every week, and I was really impressed with that. And then I won again. And then I had some other records that I set. I was the first amateur to turn a car over. And I was the first amateur to turn a car over twice. But, you know, I took that thing home and patched it up and beat the roof out and took it back to the racetrack and raced again. And I was really proud of that. But my mom was really unhappy about it. She had given me permission to race because I had gone to her with the bargain that if she'd give me the written permission to race, which the rules had that you were under 17 or 18, you had to have a written permission from a parent. So I told Mom, I said, if you'll do that, I'll raise my grades in school. Well, that was a perfect comment, a done deal. And she thought she did it for 1 week, and I thought she did it for 100 years. So we were using my version of the agreement. And so about I guess 6 or 8 weeks on into the program, she said, what are you doing racing again? I said, Mom, you gave me permission. And so she, no, I just gave it for 1 week. No, Mom, you gave me permission. Yeah, we didn't specify a date, but you said you give me permission if I raise my grades, and I raised my grades. So she kind of fussed about that a little bit. My dad backed her up really good. You know, he was such a neat guy anyway. But, you know, he still really worked hard to keep things really good with her. They were a great couple. You know, married for all those years and had 10 kids they raised and put through Catholic school, and, you know, fed us and clothed us and did all the things that you're supposed to do. Went to sporting events with us. And, you know, just a great family deal. And so here I was off racing. Well, the school year came to an end. I graduated from high school, and my mom had a sister whose husband was the national sales manager for Mercury Outboard Motors, and Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Patty and their 3 daughters, Carol and Lori and Barbie, lived in Wisconsin. So my mom called Aunt Patty and said, can't Uncle Jimmy find him a job up there or something and get him away from these racetracks? And so he called back and he said, I got a truck in Miami for a boat show, and the truck will come by your house and pick you up and pack a little suitcase with some, enough clothes for you to last a while, and bring work clothes, but bring some good, pleasant clothes too, and get on that truck and come to Wisconsin. So I did that. I was excited about going to this place way up here, way up north where there was snow and all that stuff. Although it was the beginning of summer, we got to Wisconsin, and the lakes and rivers were gorgeous, and boats I could look out there and see boats just riding around the lakes and the rivers and stuff. And the next thing I saw was every time I looked at those this way or a little that way, here was another racetrack and some race cars. Wisconsin had so many racetracks, I just could not believe it. And it was about a quarter to get in. And in those days, you could buy a ticket for a quarter and they'd let you go on the pits. Which, man, that was just great. You have a quarter, I could go in there and walk around these cars and talk to these race drivers and race mechanics. And so, boy, I was set up for that. I didn't race any yet, but I talked to people, made some friends, and just really enjoyed myself. And really saw a lot of good competition. And in particular, there was a little guy named Miles the Mouse Melius, that had a beautiful little blonde-haired wife and 7 kids. And he'd come in from off the racetrack, and those kids would clean that car up like they'd never even been on the track. And it really impressed me because all the other cars had dirt all over them. Which dirt, that's what happens, And I got a kick out of that. And the mouse would talk to me. I would walk by and say hello, and he'd, well, how are you tonight? Good to see you. And he'd tell me something about his car or something. And he had 4 boys and 3 girls. And most of the time, all the kids were there, but not always. But one of his sons, who later was the ASA chief steward there, I'm trying to think, Milius, shucks. Anyway, it wasn't Miles, but he became a really good official in racing. That later on, when I went there and raced later on, I would see him as the ASA official. And I really always remember, how good that was for me when I was a little bitty guy. But anyway, I got to run there a lot. Ended up back in South Florida and made friends with my mom and dad, and especially with my mom. Got her to really accept my racing activities. And my dad really became one of my best friends. He really helped me every bit he could. He worked a lot, so he didn't have a lot of time to put into the actual work of the car, but he would do little things that helped me. And I thought that was really neat. And then I heard about this place in Alabama that had good racetracks, and they were paved. And I had tried dirt, and dirt really, I really could never get settled down on dirt and go like some of these other guys could, but I could go really good on pavement. And then I heard the tracks in Alabama were paved. And so I finished up a race at West Palm Beach one Sunday afternoon. And my hero, Red Farmer, won the race, and I finished second. And I probably won I think $95 for finishing second in this 100-lap feature on a half-mile paved track. And I looked at that money and I said, wow, I need to. Well, a couple of the young boys had been up through Alabama. One of the boys was chasing his girlfriend, what he was doing. But they used that as an excuse. But then they at least had stopped at a couple of these tracks and came back telling me they were really good. We're going back. Why don't you go with us? So I rounded Donnie up. Donnie had grown just a little bit amateur. Rounded him up, and he and I jumped in my pickup with the race car and the trailer on the back. And those two guys lived there. They had a 34 Chevy Coupe with an old power in it. And off to Wisconsin, off to Alabama we went. And the first night in Alabama, a little racetrack at Birmingham called Dixie Speedway, quarter-mile paved. I ran fifth in the heat race and fifth in the semi and fifth in the feature. And I went to the pay window and got $135.
That was a lot of money back then, though, right?
Yeah, right. I went down from the pay shack and told Donnie, we have died and gone to heaven. Look at all this money. So, we're just really happy, and got ready, went to Montgomery for the next night, and stopped to the guys. The guy was a mechanic for Sonny Black, who was one of the guys that won it, fairly frequently. Cadillac powered, fuel injected, 34 Chevy Coupe. And the guy invited us into his gas station to use the facility to clean the car up and prepare it for the next night for the next racing. And went out to Montgomery and got advised by a few of the other fans and drivers and crews and stuff. Don't bring that little Chevrolet with that Chevy engine to Montgomery, because the Cadillacs will blow you out in the woods. And my attitude was, well, I've been in the woods before, I'll just go again. And I had fast time, which paid. And then I won the heat race. And then I won the semi. Then they had an Australian pursuit race, which I had not heard of them or seen one yet, but it was lined up inverted start by time trial, a fast car last, and if you got past, you had to pull out. Well, I started last in that in 7 laps. I won that race, past everybody. And then for the feature, Sonny Black taught me a lesson that I feel like helped me the whole rest of my career. He had power on me down the straightaway, and he beat me up. I started on the pole, he started beside me outside the pole, and he beat me down the straightaway into the corner and pulled down low and ran that way the whole 30, 35 laps, whatever, 30 laps, I guess the feature was. And I could get almost by him, and then he stepped on an old Cadillac and just jumped out there in front of me again. He won the race, and I finished second. And couple of my cohorts were all sad about not winning the feature, and I said, "Don't worry about that, because I'm not winning a feature yet, but I'm gonna." But in the meantime, I just collected $450 and didn't even win the feature.
Right.
So we're in the right place. And the next week, I won my first feature of my career at that track. And Donnie, the guy that was driving the other car, wasn't doing any good. Anywhere we went, he didn't do any good. So he told the boy that owned the car that he's going home. and Kenny Andrews. And Kenny said, "Bobby, what do I do?" I said, "Put Donnie in that thing." And so the night I won my first feature, Bobby Allison drove his first feature race. And he finished about sixth. And there probably were 20 good cars there that night. So we were entrenched. We were convinced that we were in the right place. The people were friendly. The tracks were good. The fans were really friendly. And the country itself was just pretty to me, just pretty country. Lakes and rivers and little hills, not any big mountains right where we were. Further north, there are even big mountains there in Alabama, but Montgomery to Birmingham, just little hills and beautiful countryside. And, like I said, great racetracks and friendly people and great purses. So we made our home there. And I went home and talked to this friend of mine, Red Farmer, who I had worked for mechanically before I started driving my own stuff, or before I drove a modified. I had driven some amateur with Red, but was at the same time Red. I was getting friendly with Red. But I drove. Donnie had not driven anything but a little bit of amateur, and got in that car, and for the first night out, finished sixth in the feature. And so we were really convinced that this was our new home. And just things went really good for us. I didn't win but one more time that year, but I ran good every night, second, third. And the purses were good, and we ran 3 and 4 nights a week. So all of a sudden, we were winning a lot of money and enjoying ourselves, having a good time, and building a fan club and all that stuff. It makes you feel good about racing. And went back for the next year. And I won 25 races.
Wow.
The second year. The third year, I won probably 31 or 2. And the fourth year, I won 41 feature races out of 45 times we were in.
Bobby, one thing I remember growing up, I was born like in '69, so I come from a racing family, and we always had speed sport in the house and that. And one thing I always remember is reading speed sport, and you were constantly racing.
Yeah.
You were running, what we'd call cup, on the weekends, and you were doing a ton of racing throughout the week. And that was something you pretty much did right up until the day you quit driving.
Yeah, I really, really loved the racing, enjoyed the racing, but I also felt like it just kept me sharp and made me pick up little things that helped. I had a great feel for the car, which was a gift. That's how I always felt about it anyway.
Sure.
I got where I could really use the gas pedal to the best advantage and use what brake I need, but never have to overuse the brakes. And I knew what adjustments to make on the chassis. And I was forever trying something new. And sure enough, every once in a while I hit on something that makes that car go a little bit faster. And I really loved it.
You were kind of known, and of course, when you look at your career, you drove, for like 14 teams or something like that, and you drove pretty much every brand of race car that come along through stock car racing at that time. And one thing I know, it seemed like you didn't stay any one place too long. Was it always because you were trying to find that advantage?
It was partly that, and it was partly I could not stand somebody that was complacent.
Gotcha.
I drove for a couple of different big teams that, I run second or third, and they're happy, and I'm not happy.
Right.
Why be second or third when it looks like I could be first?
Sure. Right.
It's a lot more fun staying in victory lane, ain't it?
Yeah, it is. Yes, sir. And I kept that attitude all the way to Pocono, I guess.
Yeah.
I had run a short track somewhere the week of Pocono. Judy was with me. I had that Aerostar and things zoomed around the country. And we came across the country. I had run Saugus, California.
Okay, yeah.
Saturday night. And Riverside on Sunday. And went across to Slinger, Wisconsin for Tuesday night. And then went to I went somewhere every night.
Right.
I won almost every night. And then I had that crash at Pocono on that Sunday. And I was so lucky because of the crash really, I should have not made it through that crash. I should not have survived. I spun and started the engine stall on the start of the race on the tunnel turn at Pocono, and 2/3 of the way around the track. And I was sitting the crossways in the track, and the last place guy, 2 blocks behind the next last place guy, was standing on light blinking, caution light blinking, and the whole deal. And the guy drove wide open right into my left door. And, I ended up with a closed head injury, and they had me at the hospital finally. It took them forever to get me out of the car and then finally get me to the hospital. And Judy was there with me. And this old doctor from the area came in there, and he was in his gardening clothes because he was working with his garden at home, and they called him and said they had an emergency. And he didn't even put fresh clothes on. He got in his car and came to the hospital. And he came up there and said, "Lady, he's dying," which just really flattened her. He said, "Now, I need to drill a hole in his head, but I need your permission. And I need it right now because he is dying." And she said, "Okay, do it." He drilled that hole in the wall, and it squirted blood on the wall of the hospital room. But it was in the right place and time.
Wow.
And that man became a really special friend of mine. And he's a little bit older, and he'd been around for a long time. He'd done a lot of really good things, had a great reputation. He'd traveled a little bit to Europe even to do some head surgery on patients. And he did drill that hole in my head in the right place and the right time.
Wow.
Yeah, you hear a lot of stories about people getting in bad accidents like you, and almost every single time the drivers become really good friends with the person because they saved their life.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, and he remains special with me. And, he finally had passed away, from old age. But Judy and I went and visited him a lot. I recovered slowly, but at least I did recover. Never got back in a car competitively, but at least I was able to stand and walk and talk. And,
absolutely.
Really think of him today, and all I can do is smile and say thank you.
Wow. Yeah.
I live a few blocks from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so obviously I'm a big fan of the Indy 500. 1973 was your first year you qualified for the 500. What was that whole experience like? And I guess first off, how did that deal actually come about?
Well, it's kind of a really crazy deal. I was just jumping around getting all kinds of things because that was my nature. And we'd been at Riverside for one of the IROC weekends, I guess it was. And a guy named Don Nichols was the mechanic on the UOV Shadows. And he came walking through there and he says, "Hey, Bobby, I'm Don Nichols. I have these Shadows here. Boy, they're really nice." He says, "How would you like to take a lap in one of them?" I said, "Oh, boy, I love that. Yeah." So he says, "Well, get your stuff." Well, I didn't even have a closed face helmet. I had an
right.
open face helmet with a sock, with a pair of goggles, and nothing else for a sports car. You just like a stock car, NASCAR driving suit and the whole deal. And then we went out for 8 laps of practice. Got back to the pits. And there was a crowd gathered around, but Nichols and a couple of his close guys said, "We got to get you signed up. You're third fastest." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, there are 2 McLarens here, and you're faster than one of them, and there are 2 Porsches here, and you're faster than one of them." I said, "Wow." And the Porsches were Penske's. And it was with Mark Donahue and George Foreman, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
And the McLarens were Bruce. I think Bruce had just gotten killed, but they had a couple of really good guys in the McLarens.
Was one of them Revison? Was Peter Revison one?
Yeah, one of them was Peter Revison. Yeah, and so. I'm there and smiling and everything. And this guy comes up, got a real limey accent, a real limey big vocabulary where every word was a cuss word out of the guy's mouth. "You're fired. Get out of here." He accused his guys of doing something that made his car go. But I went 7 miles an hour faster than Jackie Oliver, who was the #1 driver and part owner of the Shadow team at the time. And I had to turn in my driving gloves and whatever else I turned in for that because I had to get out of there. 2 reasons. One, I had to get away from the car to calm the guy down, but also I had to get him to stop cussing. He was really be silent. So, and I've seen those cars here real recently, and they are still really incredible.
Beautiful, aren't they? Just beautiful pieces of equipment. Yeah.
I never got to get back in one of the McLarens. They turned and walked away, and Roger Penske stopped me. And he said, "Boy, you went fast in that thing." I said, "Well, the thing was pretty neat. It wasn't pretty good, I was really, really happy with that." Oh, he said, "I got to get you in one of my cars." And I said, what are you talking about? Roger says, I want you to come out here to run this IndyCar test. I said, Roger, I don't want to. He said, I'll pay you. I said, okay. How much will you pay? He said, I'll pay you well. I said, okay, I'll be here. So, through my home, through my airplane home, and got back in the thing, came back out there 2 days later, and they're doing an IndyCar test at Ontario. And so I brought a friend of mine from home, an early sponsor and really gentleman businessman that was real help to me along the way. A fellow by the name of Tom Galore. He came with me just for the outing for him.
Mm-hmm.
So I get to Ontario, and I walk in there and hear these limey talking guys. You know, I thought were actually British, and they were a couple of Americans that were on this team that had tried to develop a British accent. But they greeted me. They greeted me with the most unfriendly greeting. And, well, you know, you think you're fast and blah, 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 whatever. I said, well, can't let you in the car right now. That you'll run into a wall. So I put my driver's seat on. I sat all the way through lunchtime up until mid-afternoon. Finally, I said, okay, take a lap, but be careful. And the IndyCar really impressed me. I had never been in an IndyCar in my life. And I ran third fastest. Mark was there, and Revson was there. You know, I guess most of them were slightly quicker than I was, but I was ahead of everybody else that was there to test. And the headline, yeah, instead of saying, well, you did good or you whatever, knelt down beside the car on the left side and started cussing at me. And I said, what's wrong with you? He said, you lied to me. I said, I didn't lie to you about anything. What are you talking about? He says, you said you never been in one of these cars before and you go faster than all these guys and as fast as Mark and Revson, you liar. I stood up in the seat of the car. I said, I didn't lie to you about anything. I have never sat in one of these cars before today. And I just earned my pay, earned my pay, and I just left. And so when it got, he started to take my driver's seat off and flew the airplane on home. Next morning, Roger called me at home and said, what did you do? I said, I wasn't monitoring around there, so I came home. Oh, no, I got to get you to Indy. So you were really fast. I thought, I need to get you to Indy. And somehow, all of my IndyCar stuff represented the same kind of deal. I went fast. The car suited me really well. And some of the crew or, some of the engineers, and of course, right way back then, even Roger had all these engineers always. And, you know, they're always like, I'm cheating. You know, I never saw this. I wouldn't know where to cheat on one of these kind of cars. So I knew how to drive the thing to where it felt right. And I ended up when I agreed to go ahead and go to Indy, and we went and tested a couple times and went pretty fast, but could not get in tune with the people that I needed to be in tune with.
Right.
And, qualified fast the second day, but the second day, and you know, in Indy, the second day also starts behind the first day times, and so I was faster than a lot of cars that were behind me, but I had to start back. I think 24th, and just had a terrible time. And finally,
now, we've talked to a lot of guys who started in the back like that, and they all say the same thing. They talk about the fumes and the dirty air.
Yeah.
Did you notice that as well?
No.
So none of that really bothered you, huh?
It didn't bother me any.
Oh, that's cool. You're the first person that said that.
So
yeah, didn't have a problem with that at all.
Wow. So by this point, you've been in several Daytona 500s. How did the Indy 500 really compare for you as far as like the attention, and just all the people and the pageantry behind it? How did that really compare to the Daytona 500 for you?
Well, the pageantry was certainly some better than Daytona, but not a whole lot. You know, not a great big jump out there, but certainly some that you had to notice. And I felt good about that part of it, but same deal. You know, just start the race and have problems.
Yeah.
And you know, so many of the regular Indy guys didn't have any of these problems.
Right.
And you know, I always felt like, you know, I never could get tuned with the key guys.
Right.
You know, probably the exceptional to the whole thing too was I had a great relationship with Mark. Mark stayed out at the racetrack, stayed out of the deal. You know, he did his deal, and he didn't talk to the mechanics or the engineers or whatever. And you know, the 73 Indy was such a heartbreak to me because I had done all this. We had all this problems in the start of the race. I got a lap behind, and I ended up getting my lap back, and ended up leading a lap, and the engine blew up.
Wow. Yeah, those that time period too. Those cars, you know, people who aren't very familiar with them. I mean, those things were absolute animals of race cars. They had all that horsepower. You know, you have near 1,000 horsepower. All the downforces coming from the wings. You know, those giant front wings, that giant tabletop rear wing, and I mean, those just had to be an animal to drive.
Actually, I didn't feel like worrying about it.
Okay.
The thing really went where I was wanting it to go. It responded really well to my driving, and I kept thinking, well, okay, all the bad stuff's behind us, and actually. Got always lead that lap.
Right.
And then the engine blew up. And I really was sour on I guess the whole word Indy.
Okay.
Because they were so adored by the rank and file. And
did you not feel welcome? Did you not feel welcome there?
Did I do what?
Did you not feel very welcome? Like they weren't welcoming to you? They
right? Yeah. Did not feel welcome. Did not.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what led to the, NASCAR getting so big later on and IndyCar really tailing off, is because IndyCar got to be such a close club in a way that they hurt themselves so much. A question I try to ask drivers who, especially drivers who have had the career that you've had, where you've raced for so many different people and raced against a lot of different people. I like to ask them, I like to give them some drivers' names and just talk a little bit like what it was about, or what it was like racing against them. So I have a few names here, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Yeah.
The first one, David Pearson.
David Pearson would make me so mad because David Pearson would not race you early in the race. He could be sitting on the pole, and you could get up there and get a count on him, and he'd back off, let you go. But he was saving that car.
Right.
I wasn't smart enough to really pick up on that early. Finally, several years later, I did get a little bit of that where I saved my car a little bit too, and it helped me win some of those last races. But David Pearson, when it was time to go, he would go.
Yeah, he was man, he was good. He was a hell of a race car driver.
He was the silver fox.
Right, in every way, right?
He was. Yep. He was.
The next name I had on my list, Harry Gant.
Harry Gant was really, really a neat guy. Went really good. He was more likely to race you harder early in the race than David would. But he was like me. He didn't really put two and two together and say, wait a minute, I'm using this car up too soon. And, somebody else is getting the benefit of that. But he really, really went good. He understood the car, responded to the feel of the car really well.
And the next three, I can't do this without getting criticized if I don't ask you about these next three. The first one was my guy, Richard Petty. When I was a little kid, Richard was my guy. I mean, he was so flamboyant, and all that. What was it like racing against Richard?
And Richard raced hard. He was used to having an advantage on people. And he responded poorly if you beat him. And that just really tickled me. And so I made him mad a lot.
All right.
At least 85 times.
At least 85 times.
Yes. Yeah, at least 85. Probably there might have been 2 or 3 in there on top of that where I wasn't running good enough and still made him mad.
Oh man.
I'm telling you. The guy was a hero. I'm telling you, he was a champion. And I admired him, but I couldn't tell him I admired him because he tried to use that against me.
Right.
Right. True.
Well, yeah. The next one is the only guy on my list that you would have raced Indy cars and stock cars against, AJ Foyt.
AJ, I never was able to make friends with AJ. He was fast, but he would take the unfair advantage, and the officials would let him get by with the unfair advantage. You know, he had everybody in his pocket, and I resented that. I was racing in a stock car one day at Texas, and I was faster than he was in practice, and so he went to the Goodyear guys and got my tires put on his car. That did not sit well with me.
No, I can see
No,
that.
I totally understand that.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Sr., I'd be killed if I left him off this list.
Dale Earnhardt Sr. was really, really good. You know, he used that intimidator handler that they had given him, and he would try to crowd you. He'd put a wheel against the side of you, and you know, a lot of things to make you back off. But I beat him at Talladega one day, where we went side by side with him rubbing on me pretty good. And I won. And he come to victory lane and said, "You SOB, anybody would have lifted but you."
What I remember,
had this fun.
What I remember about him so much is how hard, like you know, when, as you know, especially in the bias ply era, when the tires would fall off, you know, you catch the guy and stuff like that. And so many times you'd see somebody trying to get, you know, like he'd get chased down for the lead, and guys trying to get by him, and man, he would race them. You know, he'd get them to wear their tires out, so he could take back that advantage.
And he knew how to do it where he didn't hurt his tires as bad.
Right.
Just, you know, and I really liked him all the way from day one to the day he died. And just he was a fan pleaser. You know, he got out there and he made it show.
Right.
Made a lot of smoke. And he was able to keep the car under control so many times. Where so many other guys, if they tried to really dog one hard like that, they end up overdoing it and, you know, losing the deal or losing the lead or sometimes using the whole car.
Yeah, he really did have that special ability. It really is amazing to go back and watch those races. The next one would be your brother, Donnie.
My brother, Donnie, was a mean little SOB. And he really, really drove hard. He was really one of the very toughest ones I had to race, but he raced me tougher because we were brothers. You know, he made a lot of remarks to me along the way about, you may have got me today, but I'll get you tomorrow.
Right.
And you know, it was his total attitude, which was good for competition, good for the fans, bad for him, because too many times he had the deal cut and done, had the race won, and end up overdoing it.
Yeah, I think he'll go down. To me, he's one of those guys that never gets recognized for how good he really was. Just when you go back and watch all those older races and you really pay attention, man, he was fast a lot of days.
Really,
the last person, and a guy that I truly felt was the beginning of the new era of driver. The guy that was so marketable, the guy that was well-spoken, good guy, hell of a racer, and that's your son, Davey.
Yeah, boy. Wow. He was such a delight to me. Just an incredible situation. He was complaining one day somewhere about, he wanted to win some 500 or 600 mile race or something. And I said, Davey, you're doing really good. You're young and you got so much ahead of you. You're doing really good. Sit back and enjoy it. He said, no, I want to beat you.
Yeah.
And it was so basically, solidly true. And what a compliment to me.
Yeah, I really thought that he, boy, I mean, we look at the Jeff Gordons and some of the guys that come along later, and I really felt like your son was really that first kind of guy like that in terms of just that total package, and and a hell of a race car driver on top of everything else, and
he was so good, and he paid attention, and he worked on doing it right and doing it better than the next guy.
Well, and he really understood the cars too, which was which some of that's been lost, especially today as we've gone along. But man, I just remember reading articles and listening to him talk, and I mean, he was a stone cold racer through and through. No two ways about it.
Yep. And I had him there, this youngster that was so enthusiastic. But see, way before that, he'd come down there school night, and work till midnight with me, just giving me a hand on stuff, and finding why I put that bolt there where I put it, and why I just did this thing like I did, and why I did this, that. It's he was a delight, without a doubt. But he was learning the whole time.
And there's one more name I left off the list accidentally, and I just thought of it sitting here, and I meant to write it down. And it was a guy I was a huge fan of, Neil Bonnett.
Oh man, what an incredible deal! Neil Bonnett really had that touch, and he came to my shop when I was trying to run that Matador, and about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening, and I had about 3 or 4 guys I'd kept over, and working myself on the engine. We had a terrible time with the engines, and it wasn't because AMC made anything bad. It was because everybody that made speed stuff for AMC considered they were working on junk to begin with.
Yeah.
And that was so wrong, and it was so wrong of these people and these companies to take that attitude. Because everybody used the same basic stuff. And most of the guys really had the touch for having the right kind, making the right kind of equipment and all. But they would do stuff wrong on the engine assembly and never back up and say, wait, hold on, you got to torque that nut on that bolt. You know, nobody torqued it here. And always the AMC, don't worry about it. And that broke my heart.
Right.
Sure.
Because, you know, I won 5 times in the NASCAR stuff. And I won 2 major USAC races with that thing. And we had some kind of a free-for-all kind of a deal that I won. I forget what the deal was, but anyway, got one more win against some of these guys that were really hot dogs just by having the things bolted together right.
Right. I thought they were. I always thought those AMC Matadors were really cool. I loved the look of them, stuff like that. I really like those cars. And I just, you know, we were talking about Neil, and man, I just thought that guy was. But I don't know. There was just something about him. I liked the way he carried himself. I liked the way he raced. I just, I really enjoyed watching him.
Well, he came to my shop. You know, I knew who he was, but I didn't know him well. He lived right close to where my shop was, which was close to my house. And they came in, and I said, "No, Neil, go home. I'm really, really behind here, and I got to get stuff done." He said, "No, I'm staying here." He said, "I came to help you." And he says, "I'm really mad about the way your guys are backing you up because they're not helping you." And he says, "I'm going to do whatever will help you, and I'll clean the toilets if that'll help you." I said, "Wow." So I said, "All right, we're doing set ahead for the AMC." We had a terrible time with the breaking the valves and the rock arms and stuff. That, you know, what it really was they were buying cheap stuff.
Yeah.
And but see, they never would let me see anything. At first, Traco wouldn't let me see. I led every race I ran that car. And every race till the next to last race, that thing broke a rock arm. And it wasn't AMC's fault because it was a crane, $1.95 for a dozen rock arms. And they break if you put them on your grandma's laundry wagon.
Right.
And they wouldn't let me. If I walked up and they had the hood open on the car, they'd close the hood. Here, I'm the driver of the car, but I can't look under the hood.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
So I just have one last question, Bobby, and then we'll let you go.
Okay.
My question is, so you obviously had you had a lot of legendary wins. If you had to pick one win that you were, I guess, more proud of or meant the most to you, what do you think it would be?
It would be one of the wins with Ralph Moody with a Holman and Moody Mercury, Coca-Cola Mercury. That car was just really good. It really responded to adjustment. You know, I could tell them. We had the radios by then. I could tell Ralph, and one of the crew guys was really good at reading my comments too, and so he would respond to wedge adjustment or. We didn't do much tire pressure adjustment, but I did do a little bit. And I wish that I would have paid closer attention to that, because as time went on, I finally got convinced that the tire pressure was really, really effective. And there were a lot of times when we probably could have been fooling with the tires and gone faster. But the Matador at Ontario, California, where we got protested after the race, probably was that made this deal for me.
That's
the
cool.
car was still, second rate car, second rate engine, second rate everything. But it wasn't. It was called that, but it wasn't. And the only difference from the whole rest of the season that year was it did not break a rock run.
Right. Well, Donnie, I'm sorry, Bobby. My apologies.
Donnie is my brother.
Right. I'm so sorry. I do that every once in a while. Bobby, I'm very sorry for that. Bobby, thank you so much for taking your time out and speaking with us. It is so kind of you, and although the people won't see this, we had some technical issues. Thank you for being so kind and putting up with that. And you are, in my eyes, the Allison family as racers, and you in particular are just, you're just up there. I don't even know how to even describe it, but I think you guys are. I'll put it to you this way: auto racing would not be what it is today if it wasn't for you and your family. And I thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
And thank you for coming on the show.
That compliment.
Yeah, and I mean it.
Yep. Okay. Well, good deal. Fun talking to you.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.